Hello everyone, welcome back to another live stream. I hope everyone is hearing me well. Here we are. Welcome back everyone to another live stream. Thank you very much for joining me, everyone who's been waiting, and everyone joining us as and when. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. I hope you're all doing well. Okay, so we spoke about, for those of you who haven't watched my previous video that I could recommend you watch after this live stream, I spoke about the latest statement from the Al-Qassam Brigade spokesperson Abu Ubaida. Very important details. I also spoke about the Cyprus-Gaza corridor. Some of you might have watched it. Some of the latest developments from Gaza and the latest updates from Israel when it comes to the protests of the families of the prisoners in Gaza. In tonight's video, obviously if anyone has any questions regarding that video, please do feel free to contribute your thoughts and questions. You can start sharing them from now or from whenever. Just make sure you highlight them so we can get to them quickly for anyone watching the live streams afterwards. But the main topic that I wanted to talk to you about tonight is Professor Elan Pappe, who is a neo-Israeli historian, one of the most famous ones actually in recent history. Elan Pappe, for those of you who don't know, he's actually a native of Haifa, the city that I was born in. He is profoundly anti-Zionist. The man wrote one of the most important books with regards to Palestine, called The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. A work that is very, very much really appreciated. Anyone who wants to know what happened in 1948, including many things about Zionism, its plans, the ethnic cleansing, details, all of these things, it's a must read, really. It's an essential reading, like some of you are saying. And the guy has spent the past few decades really revealing as much as possible when it comes to this. So he obviously had other books as well. And that book particularly, he had some people, obviously, he sought assistance from Palestinian historians too. But in that book, he also had access, and as an Israeli Jewish person, to some essential information that not everyone can get, really, with regards to the history of Israel, how it was established, and all of these things. I wanted to talk about tonight about a recent interview he had that was published in TRT. Now, there's a lot of talk going on about what's gonna happen. Where are we gonna reach? Is there gonna be a ceasefire? Is Israel gonna last? Very, solid questions, really, that many people want to know. Now, I previously spoke about many times how I thought that Israel, as we know it, ended on the 7th of October for various reasons, really. The level of military humiliation that Israel suffered on the 7th of October was unprecedented. It led us to the situation that we're in at the moment. And obviously, you have the pseudo-narrative people who will talk to you, obviously, about the massacres that happened on October, the mass killing of civilian people that I spoke about many times, and how Israel committed them. The massacre in the Nova Festival, when Israeli Apache helicopters were recorded, and we had these recordings published that we spoke about very earlier on, shooting at Israelis left, right, and center. Whether when it comes to Kibbutz Be'eri and the other Israeli kibbutzes, where Israeli tanks invaded these kibbutzes and were shooting at them, alongside Israeli forces directly shooting at Israeli people's homes, which was confirmed by many Israeli witnesses who survived the day and had interviews with multiple networks, TV channels in Israel, and radio stations, including Channel 13 and Radio 103 FM. But it's important to get the input of other people too. And I found Elan Pappe's input very interesting. So in his interview, and I'll read some of it out for you, was shared online. He said, I think it would be written as the beginning of the end of the Zionist project, and people who are good historians would remind the readers that the beginning of an end of projects such as Zionism is the most dangerous chapter in the history of a place. It's when a regime, the project, call it whatever you want, fights for its existence, and then it is very cruel, it's ruthless, it is very violent. More than ever before. So people would say it was the darkest moment probably in the history of Palestine, but it was the darkness before the dawn. I think that's what people would call, I think people would look at it and would say, yes, these were the terrible years, but led to something much better that we never thought would happen, but probably will happen. He added in the same interview, I think the long term, not so much, the short term, unfortunately, but I think the long term indicates that the basic moral, I would even say economic, military infrastructure that holds together the state of Israel, that allows it to oppress the Palestinians, is being eroded significantly, and it's going to continue. There's all kinds of transformations in the world public opinion, the positions of the governments, the global south, the Jewish communities, that indicate that there is a good possibility of an alliance that would be more effective than in the past, helping the Palestinians to obtain their goals of liberation, decolonization, and survival in the main. It is a society that became, even before the 7th of October, more extreme, that's in reference to Israel, more racist, more unable to accept the humanization, the humanity of the Palestinians, and is not very prone to criticism from the outside. I found this input very interesting, coming from a historian like Elan Pappe. He's a man, he's not a populist person, he's not a sensationalist. You know, you have many people talking about, obviously, wishes, what they want, what they want to happen, what they feel like happening. And although it's understandable that many times you have emotions involved, it's important to stay rational, really, when you talk about the subject and when trying to analyze what is going to happen. And I found it very interesting and probably very accurate as well. I mean, I felt like this notion since the beginning, really, as some others have as well. Obviously, many people are pessimistic because it's difficult to maintain positivity when you witness genocide, when you witness destruction, when you witness children dying of starvation, when you witness famine, when you witness such lack of humanity, such complicity, such enablement from countries that are supposed to, or at least say they do, protect human rights. And when you talk about human rights, you don't talk about it from an internal perspective, from a domestic perspective. You should be talking about it in a very sustainable manner, an equal manner, when it comes to all of the countries and all human beings. I mean, what are the Palestinian people looking for, really? Universal human rights that everyone enjoys. Every person should enjoy. Nowadays, we're in the 21st century. People should have basic rights that are not questionable. You should have basic freedom, you should have basic liberty, you should have food security, you should have your life security, you should need to feel safe, you need to have freedom of movement, you need to gain aid, you need to gain food, you need to have healthcare, access to all of these things, hygiene, water, electricity, energy. Basic things that the Palestinian people have been deprived from for the past 75 years simply for being Palestinians, simply for having a certain ethnic background or religious background, nothing else. And this is not something that any other human being should accept, not against the Palestinian people, not against anyone else, not even against Israeli people. This is why I constantly talk about equality. Equality in the historical land of Palestine, equal rights to Israelis and to Palestinians, a one state that would protect the rights of the Palestinian people, of the Israeli people of all religious and ethnic backgrounds. That's really the main thing that I want to talk to you about tonight, and I'll open up the space for some of your contributions. I'll try and reach as much as possible. Obviously depends on the level that you have in terms of contribution, and this will obviously indicate how long we will have in this session too. Firstly, thank you to Francis, Lisa, and Daniela for your supers, and everyone greeting and participating. I have a question in Arabic, and I have someone from Haifa too, juror number 6. Welcome, and everyone else. I'll translate in English. How do I value the boycott campaign so far? The boycott campaign is exceptionally effective. Boycotting companies, and we need to be specific here. I'll be very specific with you. Boycotting companies that directly support Israel. There's a difference between companies that deal with Israel like they deal with any other country, and companies that directly support Israel. Obviously, there are many movements who are very much focused on the boycotting campaign. From my perspective, it's important to highlight and note and shortlist the companies that directly support Israel. In terms of how effective it is exceptionally effective. It is very, very effective, because when you talk about a boycotting campaign against a company that supports genocide, you're sending a message that I'm not taken for granted, right? And you're causing them a lot of problems, right? Starbucks, they had to shut down. It was over 12 billion loss just a couple of months ago. And if it wasn't effective, you wouldn't face so much resistance from the countries who like Israel, like, for example, here in Britain. Why are they trying to criminalize boycotting? or prevent, for example, governmental bodies supporting the boycott movement from doing so. If it wasn't effective, you wouldn't have had people who would be so upset. You wouldn't have had people in Israel, politicians and business leaders, etc., worried about it. So it's exceptionally effective. It's very important, but it should reach the next level. I mean, the level that we talk about supporting Israel as a state. This is the level that we should be talking about, and not just the company. Obviously, that's within our power as people, really. But the bigger action that will start changing things physically and cause more problems is when you talk about actual countries boycotting Israel, boycotting, supporting Israeli army. I mean, look, I spoke about this Cyprus to Gaza corridor. Through the sea, they have plans to obviously support Gaza, and you obviously can watch my input later on, my video earlier on. You are dropping aid, air aid, and you are supporting, right, this corridor through the sea with ships from Cyprus, and you're sending unprecedented amounts of weapons to Israel. America, the US, bypassing the Congress again, right? For everything illegal or immoral that they want to do, they have an alleyway, they have a back route. And this is something to do with the countries themselves, right? With the countries that do such things. Countries that always have a back route to commit the dirty things they want to commit. Only then will we start seeing very significant results on the ground. Israel needs to be isolated, need to be secluded. They need to feel the pressure. Now, with the ICJ, you've had more and more countries reluctant in dealing with Israel. You've had the Netherlands, for example, they stopped supplying parts of the F-35. Other countries hesitant, Japan, etc. Countries that have some sort of respect for the international law, which is obviously effective. However, it needs to be taken to the next level. And how we reach the next level is by continuing the pressure, obviously, with people, what we can in terms of activity and actually taking it personally. And then when you obviously put pressure on the governments, which obviously make most of the decisions, the crucial ones, as a lifeline for Israel. So I hope that clarifies. Let's go to your next question. Lily M, what can I tell my friends who keep saying... Okay, Lily M. What can I tell my friends who keep saying that Iran is behind all of the resistance attacks? You can tell them a couple of things. That the resistance in Palestine began before any government, before the Islamic Revolution in Iran in 1979. That's the first thing you can tell them. You can tell them that they had reasons to resist before Iran, as the country we know it now, in this current government, in the current political theme, existed. You can also tell them that when the Palestinians carry out attacks, they don't necessarily go and tell Iran. You can also go and tell them that the resistance movements in Palestine, they have their disagreements with Iran, and they had very many frictions with them, particularly when it comes to Syria. You can also tell them that Iran supports the resistance movements regardless of their background and almost unconditionally. Iran didn't know about the 7th of October attacks. Hezbollah didn't know about the 7th of October attacks. But Iran is taking a stance that no other country is taking in the same manner that they do. So the notion that Iran runs things for its own benefit, I find it absurd. Iran already had an agreement with Saudi Arabia that was brokered by China before this began. So them telling the Palestinians, oh, go and launch X many attacks, I think it's very limited, to say the least. It's a very limited image of what's happening. I think it's important to look at things from a broader perspective and take everything in your conclusions, in your ideas, in your thoughts. I hope that elaborates slightly. Mar-Lago, hi Mahmoud, is there any action by Western countries to designate Zionists as terrorists? Well, the people are asking for it, but the governments are working hard to criminalize the criticism of Zionism. Like, for example, you had this little puppet in the British Parliament not long ago saying that people are using Zionist as a cover-up to criticize the Jewish people. Selling the Jewish narrative, again. We always reiterate, this is not a religious conflict. It's not Jews against Muslims. It's not any of that. Zionism is not Jewish. Zionism uses Judaism as a front for political, neo-colonial, corporate, and political greed. Zionism as a movement did not start as a Jewish movement. It started in the late 19th century by a man called Herzl. Before Herzl, you had Christian movements that supported the idea of Zionism. Herzl was an atheist. Many believe he had Christian roots. Ben Gurion, the first prime minister of Israel, was an atheist. Benjamin Netanyahu, atheist. Yet these people are speaking in the name of Jewish people. There is a very malicious move, obviously, to link Zionism with Judaism. We don't fall for that. We distinguish between Zionist and Jewish. This is why you have many Christian people declaring that they're Zionists. Hello, including Joe Biden, many leaders in Britain, in other countries, they'll tell you, I'm a Zionist, right? So it's important to remember that it's not only Jews who are Zionists and hold such a belief, but Zionism as a movement, they worked hard to ethnicize Judaism. And they succeeded to a large extent, but now that's collapsing on their head. They found it very hard in the early 20th century to get religious figures, rabbis, Orthodox rabbis and stuff like that, to support the idea of Judaism. If you look back in history, and you might find some images, and if you Google them, about thousands, like there was an instance where 50,000 rabbis were protesting against Zionism in the early 20th century and their moves. Their slight success with regards to the Jewish community, the religious community, started off with certain rabbis agreeing to the notion of Zionism, because in Judaism, for those who are religious, the Jews cannot have a state before what they believe the Messiah will come. So Judaism goes against it. Right, alongside many other things, like even now in Israel, you have so many conflicts between the ultra-Orthodox religious community and the state with regards to Judaism and Israel. They call Zionism a secular movement, and they're not secular, right? So Zionism is obviously a political movement. They use religion as a front. Many political movements used religion as a front in the Muslim world, in the Christian world. It's not something new. People need to understand that. But people shouldn't really fall for it. When we talk about Israel and Zionism, we talk about a political entity. We don't have a problem with Jewish people having a nation state. We have a problem with a political entity calling or speaking on behalf of Jewish people, saying that it represents the Jews, implementing oppression, occupation, genocide against indigenous people because they believe they are superior. That's the problem. And we're not saying, obviously, anyone trying to criminalize Zionism. I think we're a few steps away from that. But with ongoing political, public, really, pressure, increased awareness, that day can come. That day can come. And it's obviously obvious to many people who the terrorist really and actually is. Okay. Let's go to your next question. I mean, this is a very, really logical question by Rhonda Balzan Basto. 2,000 trucks at Rafah, Egypt side. Why not force the Zionists to stop blocking? So, absolutely, 100%. Why not stop them? Number one, why doesn't Egypt ditch its agreements with Israel to do with aid and open the borders and let aid in spite of any sort of Israeli, whatever they couldn't care less. There's a genocide. I'm opening the borders. Secondly, these countries that are dropping aid from the air, you have the power to stop them, but it's all a joke. They're complicit in this genocide. So they obviously do it because many of them are complicit with Israel. In the case of Egypt, they were probably threatened. But again, these are not, this is not a good enough excuse, really. When you talk about the borders and the blockade, it should be lifted by any means necessary. When you talk about people starving to death, even before that, right? Even before we reach the starvation, firstly, we shouldn't reach this stage anyway. But before the starvation, when you saw that there's a country capable of mass murder of innocent civilians doing so, you need to take any measure under the sun to stop them. Imagine you live in your, wherever you live now, okay? And there's someone roaming around shooting people to death. The police will be deployed, special forces will be deployed, the army will be deployed, and if he doesn't give in, they'll shoot him to death. This is what they would do against a criminal, right? Enforcement. So why is that not done when it's a state committing it against masses of population? That's the question here. So it's very valid, but it shows you how complicit these people are with this genocide. Patricia's asking me, do you hear about the 8 million loan Egypt got from the IMF? What do you have to say about that? It's more than 8 million. You're talking about billions, if I'm not mistaken. It's to do with Egypt. Obviously, they have a rough economic situation. They've been on and off with the International Monetary Fund. They're joining the BRICS. They have lots of works when it comes to this. Some people obviously try and link it between them and Gaza. Ever since they got that money, we haven't seen any shift in action, really, against Gaza or more in favor of Israel. If you're talking about Egypt not ditching all of the agreements and letting the aid in, because I previously spoke about this trio agreement they have with Israel and the West Bank Authority. All of them must agree before the aid gets in. So it's not necessarily Egypt saying, I don't want to let aid in. It's Israel. But we haven't seen anything. They've done this before. They're not doing anything else that's significant. They didn't open the borders to let a massive influx of people to commit Israel's ethnic cleansing campaign. So I can't see evidence that that's related to it, if that's what you're saying, but it could potentially to do with obviously Egypt's internal economic situation. Miguel Garcia, PFLP, stated they find very suspicious the attempt to build a port in Gaza by the US. This might be used for displacement or for the US to get in. What do you think? Valid suspicion. Why should you believe someone who's complicit and enabling this genocide? And again, why are you letting aid in through the sea and whatever it is, through the sea, through the air? Although again, any aid that goes in that's a relief is good. But why are you focusing on that rather than go to the cause of the problem, the root cause of the problem? Israel, preventing it, taking measures against Israel to force them to open the borders. Because when you talk about airdropped aid, you don't have they kill people sometimes when it drops. People have to swim in the cold sea to try and get aid because they're starving, and only a small tiny fraction of the society actually gets it. Yet you have ground routes that are available. Why don't you force Israel to open them? It's as simple as that. But very valid suspicion. Why should you believe a country that's been supporting this genocide? Marlago, what is the latest UNRWA following Canada restarting funding? Any other countries following? Obviously, Israel is trying to kill the UNRWA. Any countries that restart the funding again, it's a good move, because Israel knows it's the lifeline for Palestinian refugees. The UNRWA was established as a direct response to Israel making Palestinians refugees. It operates in Gaza, the West Bank, East Jerusalem, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. And it's good. I mean, we hope that other countries do that again, because it will keep the UNRWA going as an organization. If you cut the funding, you do have a risk of collapsing them and implementing by that Israel's plan to completely destroy the organization. Because now when aid goes in Gaza, it's the Israeli army telling them where to go and what to do, right? So it's good that they're keeping it alive. We hope more countries follow suit, and it keeps operating as an organization, because all of these claims against them, really, it's just a front to destroy any lifeline of the population. People need to remember that it's nothing to do with anyone being a member of anything. It's nothing to do with anything of the sort. And we know how Israel as a country is a hyper-pathological liars they are. And clearly there's a plan to destroy this body completely. And it's good that other countries are restarting the funding. ABCD mainstream media is to socially engineer your thoughts and behaviors, to brainwash you into thinking and acting a certain way. Thank you. That is absolutely correct. Okay. Dr. Asghar Salam, this corridor is going to help Israel. That's why Israel is happy about the opening of this corridor, right? Look, anything, obviously, we need to take what Israel says with not a pinch of salt, but a cooker of salt and 3 bowls of extra spicy hot pepper. That's what we need to take all of what they say, whether it's good or bad. Hyper pathological liars. Secondly, it needs to come with suspicion. Absolutely. It needs to be scrutinized. What is it for? What's going to come? Israel's going to check what's going to go in. Obviously, it's very suspicious because you have aid laying there on the ground. Why are you so keen on getting it from the sea and from the sky? From the sea and from the sky, when you have a functioning ground route, 2,000, thousands of trucks queuing in Egypt. Plus, Israel has an option to let aid, humanitarian aid from Israel to Gaza if they're so worried about someone hiding something that might harm them. But they want to starve the people to death, and all of their actions are malicious, right? So, how it might save them, we're really not sure how it might serve them, but should be taken with suspicion, and the pressure should be put on Israel to lift the siege on Gaza and not look for these very short term, highly ineffective, temporary reliefs. Esdras Santos, thank you. You said the anguish of watching a massacre, not being able to do almost anything is devastating. I'm absorbing this tragedy on a personal level. I don't sleep well at night, and I'm sadder than ever. I think you speak on behalf of many people when you say that. The only thing that I can say is do feel good about the fact that you're contributing. The fact that you're feeling sad about a human tragedy shows that you're still a human being. By remaining a human being, you succeeded. You beat them. They don't want to make you human. They want to make you a machine that consumes and lacks empathy and compassion for other fellow human beings. So you've succeeded by having this empathy and compassion, and don't underestimate anything that you do. Let no one underestimate anything that they do, whether it's sympathy, whether it's a post, whether it's a like, whether it's sharing, whether it's talking, whether it's protesting, whether it's boycotting, whether it's any sort of other activism. You do what's within your capacity. And what's within your capacity, you will be rewarded for it. At least you're not silent devils. Zaima Ismail, do you agree with the one-state solution may give equal rights to all, but it won't address the inequality with ownership of land and access to wealth and resources in the land, as it was the case in South Africa? Look, whatever problems occur afterwards, that's a different story. The main thing is the implementation of equality. Once you implement equality, you don't solve all of the problems of the world. There's still obviously going to be people who are wealthier than others. There's people who are going to be poor. There are still people who are going to be supremacists. You're not going to solve everything, but you've began the process of reformation, of correction. So we'll start off firstly with ending this genocide and this suffering. Then call for an implementation, as we do call now, for one state with equality for everyone, Israelis and Palestinians alike, and anyone who doesn't identify as either. Everyone has the right to live and have equal rights, regardless of their religion, ethnicity, ideological background, or anything of the sort. And then when it comes to a stage where we want to talk about ownership, about land, about inequality in terms of economics, all of these things, education, bit by bit. And again, that doesn't mean that everything will be solved all at once. It doesn't. It's not how it works. across the whole world, really. But you start by the things that you know are necessary, step by step, up until you do something which is far better. Rona Z is asking me, do you think the board is really about the Ben Gurion Canal? I'm not sure how it could be linked to the Ben Gurion Canal. Again, anything needs to be taken with suspicion. If you're talking about the Ben Gurion Canal, you're talking about a project that was stretched between all of the Israeli border with Egypt. It's a big project, so it wouldn't necessarily start from the sea. Any activity in the sea would be to do with the gas exploration. That's regardless of the Ben Gurion Canal. So I'm not sure how much they would be linked. Okay. See, there was one thing that was answered by you guys. You're ahead of me. Amir Khan, thank you for your membership. Mahmoud, in this message today, Abu Ubaidah called for general mobilization of resistance, including the West Bank. Could this mean Al-Qassam is running out of fighters? No, but this call is to increase the pressure on Israel. I'm not sure how effective it is, that call, to be fair, because they called for it since the beginning. And the people who wanted to participate participated. The people who didn't want to participate or couldn't or didn't want to for any of their reasons did not. Obviously, Abu Ubaidah and Hamas, they try and spark as many fronts as possible against Israel. How successful they would be in that call, I'm not entirely sure. Note that he also spoke about, obviously, the prayers in Al-Aqsa during Ramadan, because Israel wants to restrict these prayers. People would go anyway, whether Abu Ubaidah said it or not. In terms of running out of fighters, they have more than enough fighters in Gaza. All of the actions that we're seeing indicate that the strength of the resistance movements has not been affected, whether it's through personnel, weapons, the diversification of weapons, or even channeling the weapons. So it's not the need for fighters, it's more of a call to put more pressure on Israel. And I'm not sure how effective that would be, really, because like the sides that wanted to get in this battle, in particular Yemen, Iraq, and Lebanon, or parts of them, have already participated. The West Bank obviously have small hubs. So I hope that clarifies. Okay, let's see where we're at. Modified mode, is it true that Islam is closer ideologically to Judaism? Not necessarily. If you only talk about it purely from a monotheistic perspective, both religions have a view that is a little bit closer than, for example, Christianity. Christianity is to monotheism, or at least the general understanding of many Christians towards monotheism, because even when we talk about the Trinity, like they will tell you one God, right? But the interpretation of Trinity is different, although many Christians believe there is one God, and they don't believe in the Trinity as generally thought out. In terms of the monotheistic aspect, probably, yeah. However, when it comes to jurisprudence, for example, or religious Sharia, for example, very, very different. Judaism has over 600 religious obligations if you're a religious Jew. Islam, you have the 5 pillars of Islam. So, in order to be a religious Jew, you have way, way more obligations to do religiously, in general, really. So, I hope that elaborates. Carla Chapelis is asking, what would happen if the gates would hit? Would trucks come in? Would Gaza be able to get to the trucks themselves? That's the thing. It's about hitting the wall, right? I mean, in one instance, Hamas, by the way, they took down the wall with Egypt, and many Gazans started going in and out of. They caused friction. Back then, it was Hosni Mubarak. And they were preventing aid from coming in. That was in the initial years of trying to put pressure on Hamas. Then they resolved it. And now, obviously, the borders are way stricter. Obviously, Egypt probably had their words with Hamas about, bombing the wall back then and going to Egypt. But obviously, if they blow it, the people will go in and out. And it's like the notion that a wall is preventing electricity, water, food, medication is just absurd, really. It's really absurd, and this shouldn't really happen. But again, the pressure should be on the governments conducting it, like Egypt. Why are you still abiding by that? Israel, I mean, to be honest with you, Israel, there should be just action taken against them, because they've proven that they are just a genocidal bunch of psychopaths, really. I'm not sure how much reasoning can be done with them. But yeah, I mean, if they blow it out, oh yeah, everything will come in. Mar-Lago, is there any meaningful opposition from within the satanic Israel that is willing to support Palestinian statehood? Yes, there is. However, not in power, not very effective generally. Even if you talk about the protests in Israel that are either to return the Israeli prisoners, or the protests that are calling to end the genocide, and they label it as such, they're calls, right? But you're talking about an increasingly authoritarian state with more brutality. I mean, they're using way more force against the anyone who resists them in Israel, anyone who protests. But people are really, showing more and more fierce protesting and resistance to what the government does. Some people, in the general grand scheme of things, you have the power is within the government's hands. The media serves the general government consensus, really, and ideology. You have people in the media calling for a bigger genocide against the Palestinian people. So they are there, but they're not very effective. Kyle Lynch, do you think with the short attention span today, majority of people in the West will stop caring about this after a while, and the status quo will come back? I mean, typically, and that's not just in the West, really. If you talk about an escalating situation and then you have some sort of an agreement or a ceasefire, generally, many people will lose a little bit of interest, right? When you talk about when we reach that stage, the people who are actually interested in the matter will continue to be interested by the matter. And the people who are interested by the matter right now are far greater in number than previously. So, if anyone is expecting, right, whether it's Israel, whether it's the US or Britain or the EU, any country supporting Israel and wanting Israel to continue as it is, as a state, as a supremacist neo-colonial entity, because this is what they're worried about, really, it's their last neo-colonial entity, they are delusional. That's not going to happen this time. This is not some sort of an escalation that ended. This is a mass genocide, an ethnic cleansing campaign. This is a war crime, unlike any other in history, and many people will continue to talk about it and put more pressure on their governments. Think before you type. Why do evangelical Christians support Israel when it's a Rothschild satanic creation through the Balfour Declaration? How could they claim it's God when it's Rothschild secret society agenda? It's because it's really their religious belief, and it's very difficult to argue with religious beliefs. If someone holds them dearly to their heart, it's difficult to argue with them or convince them otherwise, unless you're talking about an open-minded person who is willing to accept the fact that some of the things that he might have believed in the past, or most of it, were complete lies. So it's because it's a religious belief, really. And many people, when you tell them about a religious belief, they simply will not look past it. That's it. The religion says that. I don't care about anything else. Or no, it's gonna be fine. We're gonna be saved one day, so there's no need to take any action. It's problematic dealing with people like that, again, unless you're talking about someone with willingness to understand. And all of the relationship, by the way, with Israel and the evangelical Christians, the fake relationship, really. If you're talking about people who believe that a person will come and either convert you or kill you, what type of relationship is that? Clearly interest relationship. And they probably couldn't care less about who created Israel and what have you. They're just interested in implementing the things that to them will make their belief of, right, the return of the Messiah quicker, according to them. And I'm not sure how much they care about Rothschild, to be honest. Kate, thank you so much. Ari Magoo, hi Mahmoud, how long can Israel keep ignoring, shrugging off charges by South Africa in the ICJ? As long as they are enabled to do that, they will. Israel has always been ignoring international law, has been going against international law, and ridiculing international law. Israel dismisses anything against it internationally as anti-Semitic. It's become that ridiculous. They have no self-reflection whatsoever, no accountability, no nothing. We're the chosen ones, we're the entitled ones, we can do whatever the hell we want, and if you criticize us, you're anti-Semitic. This is Israel's notion. And that's entitlement is being enabled and supported, obviously, by many Western powers. That's why they'll continue to do so. But again, what the ICJ will do, I mean, the ICJ's main thing is to stop the genocide, right? It hasn't stopped the genocide. We've had 5,000 people killed brutally by Israel since this judgment, right? But what the ICJ ruling is actually doing is deterring some other countries from dealing with Israel, countries that have an ounce of respect for international law and do not want repercussions when it comes to their dealings with Israel, primarily at a military and security level, so that they are not deemed as supporters or complicit in this genocide. Lily M, thank you. Okay, let's see if we have any more questions from you guys. If anyone has anything else, let me know. Otherwise, we will wrap up. Springs. I just watched another channel where they're claiming that the IOF are booby trapping tins of food. Is that true? Yes, that is true. And it's people in Gaza publishing these images. So you have people from Gaza on X, for example, or any other social platforms. They will release these videos. Some companies or news networks will copy the video and publish it, right? So go back to the video you watched if they are putting the source in there and go and watch it. But I've seen this 2 months ago. Like, this is not something new. This is probably just another recent one. But it just shows the level of brutality, you know. Tinned food as bombs so that when people go and try and eat, they get bombed. Mahmoud, I heard Israel bombed central and southern Beirut. Is that true? How do you think Hezbollah and the Lebanese army will act? Well, I haven't read that yet, right? Let me just actually check now quickly. It doesn't look like... I'm not sure if it's true, to be honest with you, because I haven't seen anything reported yet. But that would be a devastating escalation. I mean, they had a targeted assassination in the southern suburb of Beirut, which was awful, obviously. And then you had the retaliation against the Northern Air Command base in Miron Mountain. So any such act will be met with fierce, I think, response from Hezbollah. Okay, let's see if we have anything else. Okay, let's take this last question. And you're welcome, and thank you anyone for your contributions. Apologies if I couldn't reach all of them. And we'll finish with this last question, ABCD. Do you agree with the leaders in the region, namely the family-owned gas stations in the Gulf states, are afraid of the Palestinian cause and would rather see it fail, but give lip service in support? Well, I judge your actions, really. Many of these states have provided hardly any lip service, even, let alone any actions, right? And in terms of being afraid of the Palestinian cause, I think what makes some Arab and Muslim governments, and Western governments, by the way, afraid when it comes to the success of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian intifada and revolution against this genocidal neo-colonial occupation, is the fact that it will be a win for the people. Governments do not like wins for the people. Corrupt governments, that is. Governments that respect their people and the will of the people will celebrate and support a victory of the people. It just shows you how much these governments are against the will of their people. Imagine someone seeing a successful outcome out of this. What messages will it send? Number one, if you stand up against an oppressor, you can be successful. Number two, armed resistance against occupation is effective and it can achieve results. Number three, even if you can hold the highest, most advanced types of military equipment and security and all of that can be eclipsed in a matter of months. All of these messages are devastating to corrupt states. Do you think it's easy for them to accept such a thing or endorse it? Very difficult. Obviously, not to say that it's right, I'm not defending anyone, right? But from their perspective, as a government, right, as a corrupt government, they'll tell you, no, hold on a second, the people won? We don't want the people to win. We want the people to be tools, to be puppets, objects. Do as you're told. That's why you're indoctrinated, you're schooled, you're taught how to be a tool in a system, not to be a creative thinker, think outside the box, be your own boss or entrepreneur, or succeed in life. You need to be a slave to them, right? And if the Palestinian people succeed, that means this slave took himself off the chains, right? And managed to take down his oppressor. And that's a message that not any corrupt government would want, but I'm not sure how long they would be able to suppress all of these things. And we'll finish it with this question. Again, thank you everyone for your contributions and your comments. I apologize if I haven't been able to obviously go through all of them. We're just trying to highlight as much as possible and the most relevant comments to this. I will be, in terms of the live, obviously, because I had daily before, now I'm doing them sometimes there. Like yesterday I did one, today I did one. Tomorrow I probably wouldn't have a live stream. I will most likely have a video for you. I will hopefully be back on Sunday for a live stream. I will notify you. Obviously, I'll do my best to be with you as much as possible. So obviously I can share all of this with you and you can share your thoughts with me and emotions too. And we can discuss, go through everything together and do something good, hopefully. So thank you so much again. I hope you enjoy your evening, your weekend, your day, night, morning, wherever you are. Thank you very, very much. And thank you so much for anyone who sent supers as well. And I will hopefully see you soon in the next video. Take care.